here it is, straight from the Stellar Development Foundation. And I think you guys know who this guy is. He's like the head nerd over at Soroban. Okay, I'm just going to be honest. He's kind of like the head nerd. So let's pull this up. You will see here that it talks about Soroban opportunity, access and innovation, assets and tokens, issue and wrap, on-ramp and deployment. You get the whole thing. We know the whole spiel. But the bottom line for you guys is that on November 4th, this was all reported. It says after 2 full days of digging deep on Soroban, we will bring it home with a look, at how we keep moving the ball forward after Meridian. Don't miss the final details. Right, we're going to get into that. But the key thing is Soroban adoption, fun, ways to stay engaged. Adoption fun? This part right here, you got to pay attention to this. So let's speak for itself. Let's play this. Hopefully he's loud and clear enough for you guys. Let me see. I'll put on max volume because I had a hard time hearing him earlier. All right, here we go.
And ultimately, it is about cash and DeFi, right? So suddenly, the cash access, the worldwide anchor network that connects to Stellar, because of this immediate interoperability, because of the Stellar asset contract, because it's you can see how these two things sort of meet at the asset level. Like you can suddenly see how in the Stellar ecosystem, right, there is going to be a novel opportunity for people to open up access to DeFi in markets where it's never been available before, right? That's pretty cool. Where we are now. But where we are now.
Did you guys just miss that? Because I think you did. He says to open this up to DeFi markets that has never had that type of access before, ever. Do you not realize how game changer that is? Just in case you did, if you missed it, that's why I pointed out. Obviously, we're going to play a little bit more about this. Here we go.
Now, it's just to get us where we're going next, right? Where we go next. Where do we go next? This is literally where I'm going next, right? This is a famous painting. It's hanging at the Museo del Prado, right? Las Meninas, the ladies in waiting. Velázquez, I wrote it down, 1656, right? I'm going to go tomorrow, and I am going to stand in front of this painting. It's the Infanta Margaret Teresa, her entourage, her chaperone, 2 dwarves, a dog. Velázquez is there. You can sort of see him looking and painting. He's looking right at you, the viewer. In the background, you could kind of see the king and queen reflected in the mirror. At the time that this painting came out, it was a technological marvel. People looked at it and they were like, whoa, that is the coolest example of easel painting I've ever seen in my life. It captures everything, the level of detail, the fact that you can put all these different people in there, that you can have all these different interactions, that Velázquez is looking at you and incorporating you, the viewer, like blew people's minds, right? They did not understand the potential of easel painting, and there wasn't a lot else to do, right? Obviously, a lot has happened since then. The Industrial Revolution, photography, motion pictures, databases, blockchain, right? But tomorrow, I'm literally going to stand in front of this painting, and I'm going to sort of put myself in the shoes of a 17th century viewer. I'm just going to try to let it blow my mind, right? And when I do it, I'm kind of going to think back to this moment, like this moment here where we are standing, looking at a new technology, and it feels really, really mind-blowing, right? We have a full entourage of people here. We are all looking at this new technology, and I think we're kind of in this Las Meninas moment, right, with Soroban. By the way, I think I'd be the Mastiff. But where we go next? I'm going there, but where we go next? For real, sort of same model here with the tech. Where do we go next with Soroban tech? Well, from preview to production, right? Testnet launched last week. We're now closing in on mainnet. When is mainnet? When is mainnet? This year, right? It's soon. Here's what I can tell you. The testnet is running right now, capital T testnet, with release candidates of Stellar Core and Horizon. As soon as there are sort of stable releases of those. So those two pieces of software, we're gonna like basically start a timer and say, hey, validators, we'd like to schedule a vote 6 weeks from this moment. So mainnet, 6 weeks after stable releases come out, validators will likely vote on the protocol 20 upgrade, right? So moving from preview to production. We are moving from an MVP to sort of a killer developer experience, right? There's been so much focus on core components, on the sort of technically sweet design decisions, and now there's more on focus on like drilling down on sanding out the rough edges, on trying to prevent all of the breakages. You know, if you were here, you heard a lot of people say one of the biggest challenges was this constant stream of releases, was having to go back and fix things. Well, we're getting to the point where we're stabilizing, and now we can make it a killer DevX, right? We're moving from V1 to V2. So Soroban mainnet launch does not stop development. The initial design is built to allow the introduction of things like parallel processing, right? To help ensure scalability. And after that, there's all these paths that we could follow. I mean, Nico in his talk, he was basically like, I don't know, ZK, zero knowledge infrastructure. We could do that. We could do SpeedX, right? We could work on payment channels. But whatever that future is, like anyone here, you're like moving from V1 to V2, it's gonna happen because of what you're building, because of what you're doing, and because of feedback that you give. But what's next with the Soroban tech? At some point, we're moving from V1 to V2. With the ecosystem, we're moving from minimum viable to a virtuous cycle. So like internally, we basically said, all right, we've got this heuristic, which is a minimum viable ecosystem that's helping us keep track of development. The basic idea was that you know, we kind of wanted 3 of every key building block to exist in the ecosystem. And I think that we're at a point now where it's kind of time to change that heuristic, right? Soon, all those building blocks, the latent potential, it will be activated. Protocols will offer opportunities to lend and borrow, provide capital, right? Swap. And all those opportunities are going to attract users who will in turn bring capital. And that will actually make the protocols more efficient, which will attract more users, you know, who will bring more capital. Virtuous cycle. That's what we're moving into. The ecosystem. Projects are moving from development to launch. So many projects so far along right now, they deployed on FutureNet, they're deploying on testnet. And I think that just talking to so many of you, like you are planning to be ready on or around mainnet launch. Ecosystem is moving from development to launch.
All right, so I'm not gonna play all of that, but I wanted to share those key parts with you, because when you hear that type of talk, you can have a broader idea of like, okay, that's pretty bold with what he's saying, right? Well, wait, there's more, obviously. So I'm going to get into the next part of this, and I, of course, have also fast forwarded to this. Shout out to Cool Cat Crypto. You know, he's always talking about what, guys? Scalability, right? So let's talk about scalability in regards to Stellar's Soroban. So here it is, and basically speaking, it talks about scaling up, what to expect in regards to doing just that, scaling up. Because, you know, some people want to know about that, right? We know how Stellar can, you know, attempt scaling for multiple reasons and so on, but we're talking specifically about Soroban, right? Not just Stellar, but specifically with Soroban. So let's jump into that real quick. Scaling up, what to expect in Soroban. This one, roughly about 6 minutes, 7 tops, okay? It's good, and I already went ahead and fast forwarded. So let's go ahead and blow that up. Here we go.
And yeah, so when we talk about scalability, there are actually many things to think about. Like one of them is TPS. So TPS is the way to really like pack what it means is you have to think about it really as like a bunch of traffic patterns that are actually layered on top of each other. So like one of the baseline traffic that you have that is actually the majority of the traffic on the network is what I call here this baseline that is payments and DEX updates. So DEX updates are like market makers that are updating their offers type of things. That's kind of what this means. Then you have like spikes. So spikes are the what happens typically during arbitrage opportunities. And those are going to be times where something comes up because markets, change all the time, and like a bunch of agents on the network are going to try to take that opportunity. When this happens, it's a winner takes all type of situation where the first transaction that actually makes that trade is going to make the profit, and everybody else is going to just have a failed transaction. Those spikes can be fairly high depending on the day. And then lastly, you have like seasonal traffic. So those are going to be anything you can think of, really. They're going to be like airdrops, like I put there. Like we see quite a bit of that happening these days on the network. And people use claimable balances as a mechanism to implement those. So as far as like TPS, and again, this is the current situation. Yeah, we don't really have, I must say, we like the community, the network community here. So like validators, watcher nodes. We don't actually need more capacity on the network because the baseline is actually well under what we have set as a maximum. And the spikes are actually the times where you actually fill up those ledgers. And if we were going to vote to increase that number today, all we would do is actually increase the number of failed transactions during those spikes. Because believe it or not, when there is actually a trade to make, a lot of people are interested, a lot of bots. So from that point of view, CPU RAM are not really a concern right now, and we're good to go. Then the other type of things that we have to think about is around storage, so ledger size. And there, like current stats are that right now, about a little bit over half of the ledger is trust lines, and then the rest is split between accounts and claimable balances. So as far as like disk utilization, we're only looking at 13 gigabytes of storage just for those buckets, which is the ledger itself. And we're looking, therefore, as total overhead on a system is about 60 gigabytes, which today falls well within standard specs that you can get on machines. So yeah, pretty good. Another thing that we rarely talk about are history archives. So those are the kind of place where we store historical data, so like everything that goes back all the way to the Genesis ledger. And this is used to replay transactions, so that you can have like the records of what the network did. And today that size is about 3 terabytes, so fairly small. And the cost of actually setting up those archives is also fairly small. We're talking like if you use something like AWS S3, this is like commodity at this point. So yeah, it's going to run into the hundreds of dollars, if that, every month. The thing that we learned though is on cost is bandwidth. Bandwidth is actually the main cost driver for those archives. So anything we add to those archives, even though it looks cheap because it's only 3 terabytes, if you don't do something clever, like yeah, like if you don't use CDNs, this cost actually go in the thousands of dollars a month if you're not being very careful. So this is something to keep in mind as we move forward.
All right, I'm not going to get to the point or to the part about block explorers. I mean, it's good info, but my main thing was to show you guys that, yes, Soroban can scale. These are some examples. All right, on the third and final one, this one is not even remotely as long. It's basically like the last 5 minutes of this particular, I guess you could say, I don't know, conference, right? Post Meridian. Let's share this with you guys. Pull it up as well. Yeah, you will see a very familiar face in the middle, right? Anyway, So this one, how does a Soroban contract platform work, right? I could talk all day long about this till blue in the face. Let's just hear it from some of the main guys. It's a high-level overview of their vision of Soroban smart contracts, its technical development, and of course, don't you guys want to know about the ecosystem we've been talking about for a while? I think you do. So on this one, we will play from the 5-minute, 18-minute mark to the end of the 10-minute mark, and then wrap it up in regards to the Stellar coverage. So yeah, let's go ahead and play that. Here we go.
The Soroban ecosystem is alive and kicking. So there are 100 projects that we know of today that are building on Soroban. There are 40 presenting at this conference. Many are going to be launch ready or near launch ready when mainnet upgrades. A lot of them are here in this room. I imagine I see a lot of familiar faces. The Barrio blockchain just...
Sorry, I want to add, I have stated in the past that this gentleman on the far left has mentioned that, with 70 projects going live, right, for mainnet. Yes. Then he mentions, for instance, this whole thing of 100. I don't want you guys to get it twisted where, it's like 100 going live. I don't think that's the case. I think they're still pretty consistent on regards to 70. But even with that mentioned, I mean, come on, man. So impressive to even hear some of this. So your main, because you're not concerned, but your main key takeaway still should be, you see the prices of, like, for instance, Stellar right now, and I'm just going to pull it up just for a brief moment before we play a little bit more about this. I'm looking at Stellar, and I mean, it's like up 8.5% on the 7-day chart. Didn't really stand out in regards to everything else. Yet, what about when we get to this whole thing at the end of the year of what this guy's talking about? I honestly still think there's going to be like price shock. To me, that just makes sense. All you need is, like I've always stated, a handful of these 70. They're going to go to the mainnet to actually do something. Like, again, like I was talking about, utility in motion. Combine that with what we could possibly get in regards to November 19th, because Stellar being ISO 222. I'm just throwing out there, guys. I mean, the whole thing of this accumulation phase and so on. So I mean, just because you don't see things going on yet doesn't mean that they won't. So just keep that in mind. Yeah, let's play a little bit more about this, and I won't interrupt anymore. I'll just play the rest. I just wanted to point that out. Here we go.
Down the hall, there's going to be just like a bunch of 5-minute explanations, pitches, demos that are happening throughout the course of the next couple of days. There's so much that is being built already on Soroban, and it covers like sort of all the essential building blocks that are necessary to actually have a thriving smart contracts ecosystem. Indexers and oracles, sort of financial primitives, the AMMs, the lending and borrowing protocols, all of the developer tooling that exists, the IDEs, the SDKs. It's like pretty amazing how far along we are, given that we haven't even hit mainnet launch. And so there's a lot of content that we're going to hear here, a lot of panels that are sort of talking about what people are building, how it works, why they're building on Soroban. Bucket number 2, the Soroban ecosystem is alive and kicking. And that brings us to bucket number 3. Bucket number 3, Stellar plus Soroban equals cash to DeFi. Jed.
Right. Yeah. So I think this is one of the like unique and powerful things about smart contracts on Stellar. Like Tomer mentioned, I think we put a ton of thought and design into like making this technically like probably the most advanced smart contracting system there is. But that is coupled with what is already built on Stellar, which is like the connection to real world assets, which I think is super powerful and will really ground the things that you'll be able to build on Stellar and Soroban. For instance, there's all these like fiat on and off ramps all around the world now with like MoneyGram and other partners. And these can be used within these contracts now, which is like super powerful. So it really should unlock lots of capabilities and things that just are not possible in other platforms. So we're super excited about that for sure. So.
Are you surprised to be standing here today talking about the launch of smart contracts on Stellar?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a long time coming. We're late to the party, but I think it's actually ended up being an advantage, as was mentioned earlier, as we can learn from a lot of the path that was trod before and make a much better, more robust system. We're starting from a clean slate, which I'm sure a lot of these platforms wish they could do today, but they can't, right? So, yeah, but it's a welcome and needed change for sure. So, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that demo that Tomer was in your keynote, like, as you pointed out, it actually is unlocking this like amazing potential, right? It was pretty seamless. It was a click of a button, but it allowed users to move from cash to like a savings account, you know, which is pretty rare, pretty weird. Anyway. Yeah, so the journey, the quixotic journey to Soroban, the quixotic journey of Plaza Soroban. Here's the journey map. There's a lot of different content of that. There's 20 sessions on the stage over the next 2 days. It will really, again, sort of fall into those three content categories. You'll be seeing a lot of technical details. You'll be hearing a lot from ecosystem companies that are building, and you'll also be seeing examples of how like sort of cash to DeFi connect to empower new opportunities, including there's actually a sort of deep dive into that demo that we just saw on the main stage. And that deep dive will sort of help you actually see what's going on behind the scenes when you combine, you know, beans to blend, when you look at how an app actually connects to a DeFi protocol. Tomer, Jed, are there any sessions on here that you're particularly jazzed about? Something that you really, I don't know. What's one that you're going to see? How about that?
For me, I think both fuzzing and the formal verification sessions. Super excited about these ones.
Yeah, I'm going to try to see a lot of them. You know, I do want to see the state of WASM and blockchain. I haven't really kept up with that. So yeah, but there's obviously tons of stuff to see. And so.
Yeah, I'm excited for all of these ecosystem panels. Probably I'm definitely going to be here for all of it, but like those are pretty cool. I think we'll see how the tools, how the components, the building blocks work together. But also this one that's Nico is doing, scaling up what to expect in Soroban, that sort of gets into what happens next. I think it's going to be really cool. So stay tuned. Ton of great content. Tomer, Jed, thank you so much.
All right, so there's, you know, there you have it. I don't know what to say, really. I mean, it's nice to see the progress of this. Obviously, if you want to, you know, the full deep dive version of it, you can look more into it. But you know, I just thought, hey, I'm gonna give you like the main highlights that I thought, you know, really stood out in that regard. Like what's gonna happen with the ecosystem, scaling, you know, all this stuff.